Welcome back, everybody, to the Nole and Deep Dish Show, broadcasting to you from the Man Cave. My name is Nick, and with me, my co-host, Cody. Ready to get going, Cody?
Dude, I'm ready to go. What do we have going on?
We got a great show for everyone tonight. WWE held its second biggest pay-per-view of the year as the 27th annual Summerslam took place last night. Cody and I will review what happened on the show. Then, are you ready for some football? The NFL is back in full swing. In the first of our four-part series, the Nole and I will cover the AFC South and the NFC North. Finally, in the return of our top five, we will debate which divisions are the top five in the NFL. Cody, let's get to headlines.
All right, man, in the headlines, the British Premier League started over the weekend. Liverpool beat Southampton 2-1, and Manchester City beat Newcastle 2-0. Daniels, Russell, Williams, and Moore will not be allowed to participate in football activities at Notre Dame as the university continues an internal investigation into academic misconduct. Finally, free agent forward Sean Marion is committed to sign a deal with the Cleveland Cavs for the upcoming season. We've also got the AP Top 25 has come out for college football. I'm going to run through it real quick for you, and then we might just say what teams we don't think should have made the top 25 or shouldn't be as highly ranked or as low as they are. In the AP Top 25, number 1's Florida State, number 2's Alabama, 3 Oregon, 4 Oklahoma, 5 Ohio State, 6 Auburn, 7 UCLA, 8 Michigan State, 9 South Carolina, 10 Baylor, 11 Stanford, 12 Georgia, 13 LSU, 14 Wisconsin, 15 USC, 16 Clemson, 17 Notre Dame, 18 Ole Miss, 19 Arizona State. Then you got Kansas State, A&M, Nebraska, North Carolina, Missouri, and Washington.
You know, this poll came out as the Notre Dame kind of internal scandal happened. And,
just before it.
Yeah. And unfortunately, because of that, I think Notre Dame is a little high at 17. Obviously, they couldn't factor that into when they were voting. Because of this scandal, I think they should be more around 22 or 23. It's going to be iffy to see how Notre Dame recovers from this and what happens with those players that became academically ineligible, or it might be academically ineligible, depending on what the findings are. Also, and I'm sure you're going to get into this, Alabama, I'd put more at 4 or 5. I wouldn't put them as high as 2. I mean, they're still Alabama, obviously, and even though you and I are both not big fans of them, they're still Alabama, and I would put them at probably 4 or 5.
All right, so I have, I'm going to start with, I agree with you on Notre Dame. I think that 17 was about where they should have been ranked before this academic scandal. They probably would fit more around 23 to 25 range now with the 2 starters they have missing and then their 2 main backups. So I would agree they drop into the mid-20s. Clemson at 16 just astonishes me. They're coming off, I believe, a 11-2 season, winning the BCS Orange Bowl, beating Ohio State. Their only 2 losses were to South Carolina, who finished with an 11-win season, and Florida State, who won the national championship. So they lost Taj Boyd and Sammy Watkins, but they've got a great defense coming back, and they don't seem to think that they're going to have that much of an issue on offense. So being 16, I don't see it. I think they should be a top 10 team.
I could kind of see 16, maybe put them as high as 13, but, I mean, the loss, especially of Sammy Watkins, that's a pretty big player to lose, and Taj Boyd. That offense is going to have to retool. Now, obviously, they're a big-time program, so they have guys that can step in and put up numbers. But to lose a guy like Sammy Watkins, who had 1,464 yards last year, that's a big wide receiver to replace.
Here's what I'll say. The AP has teams like USC who's coming off of all those scholarship losses, so they are not a deep team. LSU, who lost something like 19 underclassmen in the last 2 years. Wisconsin, who hasn't really proved that much in the last couple years. Those teams are all ahead of them. Georgia, who we don't really know. I think they're going to be a great team. I think I said I thought they would win the SEC East, but Georgia lost to Clemson last year. Clemson and Georgia play on week 1, so that'll get figured out really quickly. But Georgia's coming off a year where they didn't do that great because after week 1 they had injuries all up and down the field. So how are you telling me how great they are? LSU has a new quarterback. Georgia has a new quarterback. Alabama has a new quarterback. A lot of these teams, South Carolina, a lot of these teams ahead of Clemson also have a new quarterback, so that can't be an excuse. Clemson's got, the last few years, they've had a top 10 recruiting class, so it's not like they don't have talent coming in. So I just don't see them at 16.
I'm agreeing with you on 2 of those teams. I think USC is always a little bit overrated.
Just because of their name.
Kind of like Alabama, they're USC. But Wisconsin, for me, growing up a Big Ten fan, I think this year it's pretty much Ohio State, Michigan State, or bust for the Big Ten. I don't see Wisconsin that high at 14. I would probably put them more around 18 or 19.
Well, see, the interesting thing is after, I think, week 1, Wisconsin and LSU play. Like I said, Clemson and Georgia play. So Wisconsin or LSU is going to beat each other, obviously, playing. So one of them is going to fall out. Then if Clemson beats Georgia, they should jump up. But it's still, these preseason polls, I don't know how much it's going to matter this year with the whole playoff committee, but these preseason polls are really detrimental to the teams that are ranked really low or aren't ranked at all at the beginning of the season because it takes so much to be able to get into that number 1 spot. So, now we have 4 spots, so maybe it's not going to be that difficult.
Just get into the top 4, basically.
Yeah. So, but it's just frustrating to me because it's mainly because Clemson's an ACC team that they were like, oh, we're going to place them at 16. I think they proved enough the last 3 or 4 years. They've been in 2 BCS bowls. They went 1-1 in those. And 3 years ago, I think they won the ACC. So they're not a bad team, and they have a lot of talent coming in. But so that's that. I think LSU shouldn't be ranked as high because they lost a lot of people. Georgia, I'm fine with at 12. I just think Clemson should be ahead of them. South Carolina, they usually finish in the top 10, so probably 9 is good. My biggest issue in this list is Alabama being ranked number 2. That is a huge issue to me. I'm putting all my dislike for Alabama to the side. And it's not even that I dislike Alabama, the team. I just like their fans because their fans are idiots and jackasses.
And their coach.
Yeah, and Nick Saban, he thinks he's God. So here's the thing about Alabama. Yes, they recruit, fairly well. You can't really go by the recruiting rankings because a lot of those players aren't going to play. When they do play, they don't pan out. And on top of that, we all know that recruiting ratings get, kind of skewed. I found out that firsthand last year watching Florida State recruiting when 2 people were 5 stars when they were going to UF, an SEC school. The day after they decommitted and committed to Florida State, they dropped to 4 stars. So the recruiting thing I don't put too much attention on. But they don't even have a starting quarterback yet. They're going between Blake Sims and Jacob Coker. They have no idea who's going to run that offense. Their secondary was extremely weak last year. The only reason I could see them having them at number 2 is because they assume because Alabama's schedule is so weak that there's no way they're going to lose more than 1 game. I think they're going to lose 2, maybe 3. So I just don't see them at number 2. I put them at around 5. Oregon, I think, should be the number 2 team. Oklahoma, there's a lot of weight put on Trevor Knight from the Sugar Bowl win against Alabama, so I don't know where they're going to be. They play in the Big 12, so...
Well, you know what? Oklahoma, I have no problem with at number 4. I think when we did our college football preview, I had them in the top 4 going to the playoffs, so I have no problem with them at number 4. Alabama, like I said, I would probably put them at 4 or 5, maybe even 6, because I think I didn't have an SEC team in the top 4.
You didn't have an SEC team in the top 4. I did, but I think it was an SEC East team.
I think there's going to be more parity in the SEC this year, and that's why I think they're going to cancel each other out in terms of the playoff.
I just think Alabama's got a huge issue. The most important position on the field is the quarterback.
And they have no clue.
And they have no idea, because last week they had Blake Sims taking first-team reps. everyone else seems to think Jacob Coker is going to be the first-team starter. Well, if he's going to be the starter, then why isn't he taking the first-team reps?
Well, the question for you, because you know more about college football than I do at this point, do you think the quarterback position at Alabama is more of a system position, or is it you have to have somebody good?
They need a game manager, and when I say game manager, I mean someone doesn't. The quarterback doesn't have to be
kind of like an Alex Smith in the NFL.
Yeah, he doesn't have to be a Jameis Winston throwing bombs and making huge plays, or Johnny Manziel scrambling all over the place. He doesn't have to be that kind of quarterback. He has to be someone who doesn't make mistakes.
Serviceable.
Well, what they have now is Blake Sims, who looked horrible in the spring game, making all sorts of mistakes, and then Jacob Coker, who wasn't even there for the spring game. He's just now getting used to this system. So, and no one really knows because he's coming off of an injury to his knee last year and an injury to his foot the year before. He played maybe a couple games in relief of Winston at Florida State, so no one really knows how good he is game time. I don't even think he threw a touchdown last season, So I'm not that high on him. They have some good running backs and they have one good receiver, and their defensive line is good. Their linebackers are okay. Their secondary, I think, isn't that great.
Now, my final question for you in terms of the top 25 is, do you see any sleepers from 15 or lower eking their way into the top 10? Or
top
maybe
10
even
or into
the top
the playoff?
5?
I would say the playoff, and I would say Clemson. I think there's two losses that they could have, which would be South Carolina and Florida State. I think they beat Georgia, and they run the rest of the schedule. Ole Miss, everyone's high on them. I don't see it. A&M, they're not even going to be a top 25 team at the end of the season. So I would say Clemson and LSU. I think LSU will have a decent run this year.
Based on my college football preview that we did before, I don't really have anybody getting into the playoff from 15 or lower. The one team that I do have that's not in the top 5 that I do have going in the playoff is Michigan State, which is number 8. I just think that, and they're down from the last poll at the end of the season last year when they were 3. Michigan State, I think they're going to finally overtake Ohio State this year. Even though Ohio State has
they did it last year, so they're in the same division this year, which is a little bit different for them. But the thing that I find funny is you look at your BCS winners from last year. Florida State won the national championship. They won by an average in every game by 35, I think is what their average was. They're number 1. They're not even the unanimous number 1. Alabama got a number 1 vote. Oregon got a number 1 vote. And Oklahoma got a number 1 vote, which is crazy to me. Alabama's ranked number 2.
Those are obviously homer picks.
Yeah. Well, Alabama's ranked number 2, and they're coming off of 2 losses, including the loss to Oklahoma. Oklahoma, who won their BCS Bowl against Alabama, the Sugar Bowl, they're at 4. You have Auburn at 6, who lost the national championship to Florida State. I think that 6 is actually a little high for them because, 4 of those games that they won last year, they had to come back in the fourth quarter to win, and they lost 2. Michigan State won, I think, the Rose Bowl, and they're at 8. So it's like all these teams are so scattered, and then you have Clemson at 16 who won the Orange Bowl. It's so scattered out from teams, whereas before, like last year, all these people said how highly they rated the SEC was coming off their bowl wins and stuff, but it's not that way when the SEC doesn't win anything.
Now, are there any teams not in the top 25 that you were surprised?
Louisville, I think, is going to be pretty good this year. I think that they're not going to be a top 15 team, but I think they'll finish the season in the top 25. You've got basically the main marquee teams out of the Pac-12. I think that there's going to be... The bottom end is going to change up. Whether or not North Carolina can stay in the top 25, I don't know. I think Miami can enter in to the top 25. And then UF might, depending on how the whole Kurt Roper offensive coordinator experience goes. If they can get their offense turned around, they could maybe get into the top 25. Obviously, we'll have to see how that turns out. So I would say Louisville, Miami, and UF. Those are my 3 teams that I think most likely will jump into the top 25 by the end of the season.
My 3 teams that I have that are teams to look out for. Maybe not even necessarily surprised that they're not in the top 25, but teams that probably should be. I'm going to go with Duke. I think
yeah, that is pretty surprising that they had such a good run last year.
I think they're going to be. I think they're going to have a decent year again this year. I think they're going to at most lose 4 games.
I think they have their quarterback coming back. They have Kurt Roper gone, but Coach Cutcliffe is completely capable. I mean, he was the coach of the year last year, I think. The guy's going to be great. So I think that the problem that Duke is going to have is I think Miami is a lot better than people think. Duke Johnson's coming back. They got rid of that stupid quarterback, Stephen Morris. The guy just made mistakes everywhere.
Yeah, it was like a game-by-game basis.
Yeah, he was a really talented guy. He just made mistakes constantly. His talent was great, but I think that he's going to have to deal with them. I think Virginia Tech's going to be, a lot better this season than they were last season. So the Coastal Division in the ACC, I think, is going to be a little bit tough for Duke to win this year.
Well, my 2 other teams that I have for maybe surprises, Northwestern. I think they had a good year last year. I think that in that Big Ten, with basically only Ohio State and Michigan State for sure better than them, I see Wisconsin and Northwestern kind of on the same level, even though Northwestern's not in the top 25 and Wisconsin is up there. And also my final team, I'd have to agree with you with Louisville. Louisville, I'm actually surprised they're not in the top 25 because they do have the name recognition. And
the reason why I think they didn't make it is because their coach is gone. He went to Texas. Teddy Bridgewater's gone, first-round draft pick for Minnesota. And I think that's basically all that most people knew about Louisville. What they don't know is Louisville's pretty good at recruiting Florida and getting those guys who aren't recruited by the 3 top-tier teams in Florida. So there's so much talent in Florida, you don't need those top-tier guys to make a good program. You can still get a decent program.
I think you also need to look at the team that just missed getting into the top 25, UCF.
Yeah, I think they had like 94, 95 votes or something like that.
94 votes, and they missed getting into the top 25. They're right on the border, so they're basically in the top 25. I think you'll see them get as high as maybe 16 this year. It's going to be difficult for those teams that aren't name teams that could possibly... I think you're going to see voting a little bit different this year. I think you're going to see teams that are in the top 25 that are only in the 5 major conferences. Unless you're going to get
in the AP, you're going to see who the AP. I think the AP won't change their voting. I think it's going to be the way it's always been. If they think Boise State's a top 5 team, they'll put them there. But I think when the committee comes around, you're only going to see Power 5 conference teams.
Well, I mean, if you look at this top 25, there is not one team outside of the Power 5 in the top 25.
Yeah, I mean, last year you don't really have. There was teams like NIU. Northern Illinois, they had Jordan Lynch, and they were, undefeated the season before until they played in the Orange Bowl against Florida State. Then last year, I think they were undefeated till their conference championship game. So that's why they were in the top 25. Boise State hasn't been. They lost their coach. They haven't been, as top tier of a team as they were a couple years ago. So I think that's why you don't see those teams in there right now.
One sleeper team that I'm going to pick from the not Power 5 conferences are the Ragin' Cajuns from Louisiana Lafayette. You're not going to see them get into the top 10 or anything like that, but I think you could see them posting up maybe a 1 or 2. I think maybe a 1-loss season. They're a very under the radar team, and I think you could see them slip into the top 15.
Okay. Well, we're actually we talked about this when we did our college football preview. We're going to do our top 25 before the season starts. And I think the season starts on the 28th, and it would be the big game is South Carolina, Texas A&M. So we'll do it before that game comes out, and we'll talk about it on the show before that Thursday, and we'll give you our top 25. We just gave you kind of a clue of what we thought about the AP's top 25. So that's the AP top 25. We're going to get into, I think we're getting in SummerSlam now.
Yes.
We're going to do some SummerSlam talk. And I'm going to let you lead off with this whole conversation because I know that I'm the college football guy. I love me some college football. You are the WWE guy. You love it. You'll do anything to watch it, and that's your thing. So I'm going to let you go ahead and talk about it.
All right. Well, we had the Summerslam pay-per-view last night, and it's the 27th annual Summerslam. I believe the first one was in 1988.
87.
87, yeah.
Yeah, because that's when I was born.
If it was 87, then it would be the 28th annual, so screw me.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm 27, so I was born in 87.
Right, but you start off, the first annual is the first year, so you go,
yeah,
it
whatever.
would be 20, whatever. Anyways, they had the pay-per-view last night, and during the pre-show, I had a big problem with the match that they had on the pre-show. It was Rob Van Dam versus Cesaro. Cesaro had so much momentum coming out of WrestleMania, and he is by far so much better than some of the guys that WWE is pushing right now. And they had him lose to a 44-year-old veteran, Rob Van Dam, who was brought in to enhance talent.
Okay, well, first off, it's the power of the singlet. We all know that I'm a big fan of Rob Van Dam's singlet and the ponytail.
The big move in this match for me was Rob Van Dam went up to the top rope and went off for a splash, I believe. No, I think he went up for a kick or something like that, and Cesaro just gave him a super European uppercut with Rob Van Dam coming off that top rope, and I thought that might have been it. But Rob Van Dam, he pulled out this fight, and I have a problem with that. I don't think you need Rob Van Dam to have a win over Cesaro. It doesn't do anything for either one. Rob Van Dam's not going to be a world champion anytime soon. Cesaro needs the push because WWE has just had Cesaro losing every match recently, and it's starting to piss me off because he is so much better of an athlete than most of these guys. Don't get me wrong, Rob Van Dam is a great athlete. He's been a great athlete for years and years. But at this age that Rob Van Dam is at, which I believe is 44 or 45,
he's there for name recognition.
He's there to get the older fans to stick around.
Yeah.
And the older fans are smart enough to know that when the older guys come back, just for a cup of coffee or whatever, they're there to enhance the younger guys to get the next generation ready.
Like a mentorship.
And the WWE, their booking recently, I don't understand what they're doing with guys like Cesaro or Damian Sandow. They're just wasting these guys. What is the point of even having them on the show if you're just going to have them lose? I don't understand it, and I'm not even going to talk anymore about it. That was on the pre-show. The first match of the night that we had on the main show was for the Intercontinental Championship. The champion, The Miz, was going up against Dolph Ziggler, the show-off. And Dolph Ziggler did win this match. I was actually surprised that Dolph Ziggler won this match because of how much, for some reason, the WWE sucks The Miz's dick every time he comes out. And I don't understand why, because he
dips it in chocolate pudding.
He thinks he has so much charisma. That's ridiculous.
Whatever. I had to throw a joke in there.
The Miz's wife is a former Playboy Playmate, and she is unreal.
Good for him.
French-Canadian and super hot. Anyways, and used to be a WWE diva. But Dolph Ziggler did win this match. He caught... it was actually a really nice little sequence at the end. Ziggler was going for the Famouser, his leg drop on the back of Miz's head, and Miz somehow slipped out of it and hit Ziggler with a skull-crushing finale, and only got a 2 count. Miz was so in shock that he allowed Ziggler to hit the zigzag, his finishing move on him, for the win. And the place erupted. Finally, they're doing something with Dolph Ziggler. Dolph Ziggler is one of the, I would say, top 5 athletes in the WWE, in the whole WWE, and he's 32, 33, and they've just squandered this guy. They've given him a couple of short transitional championship runs, I wouldn't even call them runs. They were just, oh, here's the title. We'll see if the title makes the guy. No, the guy makes the title. WWE needs to start learning that. Okay, Dolph Ziggler should have held on. The last time he won the title, the place I have never. It was, I think, the night after WrestleMania about a year ago, and a year and a half ago, and the place, that was one of the biggest pops I've ever heard for a guy who, by all accounts, is one of the top, I would say, the top 10 fan favorites. Good guy or bad guy, because WWE, the fans do cheer some of the bad guys if they don't like the good guy. So I would say he gets probably one of the top 5 or 10 pops in the entire organization. So Dolph Ziggler won that match, and congratulations to him for winning the Intercontinental title. Hopefully it leads to bigger and better things for him.
It should.
Next, the WWE Divas title match came after the Intercontinental Championship match, and we had the champion AJ Lee facing Paige in a return match, and I was shocked to see Paige win. Paige won the Divas title. AJ went into her submission move, the Black Widow, and somehow, and it was a sick move, Paige slipped her arm in between AJ's, got her arm around AJ's head and neck, and picked her up, had her off the ground, and then DDT'd her. And I think they called it the Rampage, was that finishing move, and it was sick. Paige is, if somebody's going to take the title off AJ Lee, I don't think they should have done it so soon, but Paige is one of the few that I would say deserves it because she can actually go in the ring. So Paige beat AJ Lee for the Divas Championship. Your favorite Paige?
Yeah, I'm actually starting to fade on her.
Yeah.
She, just looking at her, she's not as hot in person, like on TV, like all the pictures and everything. I was thinking in the beginning
she was uncooked bacon for you.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, in the beginning I was watching her and I was like, yeah, she's pretty hot. She's British and all this stuff. And then as I kept watching, I was like, she's not the British that I like. The freak in the sheets but a lady in the streets type of thing. She's just a bitch. So I'm kind of faded with her. I'm going to choose another one to favorite.
After that, there was a commercial, a WWE commercial, but a commercial, and I'm not usually one for commercials during a pay-per-view, but this one got me really psyched for the new WWE 2K15 game coming out, I think in November. It was basically, you saw a string orchestra, and they started playing Sting's old WCW theme song, and then you just see the whole orchestra turn around with Sting's face paint on, and it was just sick. And they're just like, Sting is coming, and that just made me mark the hell out for that. I mean, it was sick. So I'm excited. Hopefully, they said that in terms of being on WWE TV and possibly having a match at WrestleMania, they're close to a deal. They have Sting on a Legends contract right now, so which means they can use him for merchandising and all that stuff. But they said they're close to a deal, although they've been saying that for the last year. So we'll see what happens with that. I don't see why it wouldn't happen. Sting said he does want one more match, hopefully with The Undertaker. I don't think you need the streak at WrestleMania, even though the streak's over now. I don't think you need the streak at WrestleMania in order for Sting versus Undertaker, the match that every wrestling fan has wanted for 20 years to happen. I don't think you need that streak.
All I know is in the video game, I better be able to use the black baseball bat while I'm Sting.
I'm sure you probably could.
I better be able to.
And not only that, they're not just going to have the Crow style Sting. They're going to have the old school Sting with the spiked blonde hair and the face paint and all that. So that's going to be cool. After the promo, we had the flag match between Rusev and Jack Swagger. The crowd was actually... I'm really starting to get behind Jack Swagger. I was never really big on the guy because his charisma isn't that great. He's not that great on the mic. I think that's why they have him with his manager, Zeb Coulter. Lana and Rusev come out first, obviously, to booze, and they're waving the Russian flag around. And WWE needs to do a better job of describing to people before the pay-per-view of what exactly a stipulation match is. So the flag match, the rules were whoever wins the match gets their national anthem played and their flag goes, a huge flag goes down behind them. So everybody thought, before the match even started, Jack Swagger Rusev attacked Jack Swagger, and then Jack Swagger got Rusev in an ankle lock, the Patriot lock, I believe they call it, and Rusev sold that ankle injury the whole match. If you're going to give Rusev credit, I would say give him credit for selling that injury the entire match. It was incredible. Even when he put Jack Swagger away for the submission victory with the accolade, he was selling that he was in pain from that leg injury. So I think, I think that says a lot about Rusev, and I think eventually they'll probably get him away from the Russian thing, and they'll turn him face, and they'll make a big deal out of him. So Rusev did win that match, and they did the Russian national anthem and all that bullshit. After that, the match that I was most looking forward to, and it did not disappoint. I was a little bit down on the stipulation for this match, but Seth Rollins versus Dean Ambrose. This was the match that I think a lot of fans were looking forward to, other than Cena versus Lesnar. It was a lumberjack match. And a lumberjack match, for those of you that don't know, is when two guys are having a normal match in the ring, and there's 20 superstars surrounding the ring. And whenever a superstar either gets knocked out of the ring or does something to exit the ring, the superstars throw him back in. Now, the twist to that is, if you go out of the ring and you're next to a guy that doesn't like you, he'll probably beat you up a little bit before he throws you back in the ring.
Stomp in your face, throw you against the post.
This lumberjack match was different from any lumberjack match I've ever seen. The lumberjacks, basically, they sold you on how bitter the rivalry is between Seth Rollins and Dean Ambrose. They both exited the ring. It was the first time I've really seen somebody deliberately attack the lumberjacks outside of the ring in order to get them off his back. I mean, Dean Ambrose is an animal. He suplexed Rollins outside of the ring onto the lumberjacks. It was insane. And then Ambrose and Rollins fought around half the arena. They went up into the stands. At one point, they were teasing Ambrose throwing Rollins off of one of the balconies. And it was sick. And they fought all the way around the ring. Of course, there's going to be another match because towards the end of this match, Kane came out, the corporate Kane, and pretty much ruined the match. I would have given this match probably 4.25, 4.5 stars. Wrestling matches are usually ranked on a 5-star basis. I would have given this match a 4.5 because it was just so packed with action. But Kane coming out towards the end ruined it for me, so I'd probably give this match 3.75 stars. Seth Rollins did end up winning the match after he hit Ambrose with the Money in the Bank briefcase, and so I think we're going to see this rivalry continue. The fans are just psyched up for this rivalry, and they've just done a good job with this rivalry, unlike other rivalries. After that match, we had Bray Wyatt versus Chris Jericho, Y2J. Bray Wyatt looked pretty convincing during this match. At one point near the end of the match, Wyatt gave his finishing move, the Sister Abigail, to Chris Jericho on the outside, but he didn't plant him in the ground. He whipped him back into the barricade that the fans are behind. And that pretty much turned the entire thing. And he just basically picked up Jericho like a sack of potatoes, threw him back in the ring, and did it again in the ring. And Bray Wyatt, just, his psychology in the ring is so good. I think I heard he was working a little bit with Jake the Snake Roberts, the old WWE Hall of Famer, and you can see it's paying off because his ring psychology is incredible, and Jake the Snake was probably one of the best ring psychologists of all time. So Bray Wyatt did end up winning that. He didn't even have Harper and Rowan at ringside. Chris Jericho beat both of them on previous Monday Night Raws in order to have them not be at ringside. So Bray Wyatt takes that one. And then we had the ultimate personal female match, which was Brie Bella versus Stephanie McMahon, the daughter of Vince McMahon. And Stephanie McMahon looked like she was in great shape. It was actually a little embarrassing for me for the rest of the Divas division, because Stephanie McMahon, who hasn't been in the ring in 10 years, looked better than 3/4 of the Divas division. Like, she knew what she was doing. And
it's like riding a bike.
And Stephanie McMahon, for the first 5 minutes of that match, just dominated Brie Bella. And I mean, you could insert Stephanie McMahon into the Divas division right now, and she could be a title contender right now. She was that good at the beginning. And Stephanie McMahon did end up winning this match, and it was, I mean, some people saw it coming, but Brie's twin sister, Nikki, came in the ring to surround, because Triple H at one point did pull the referee out of the ring because Stephanie was in the yes lock by Brie Bella, and she looked like she was about to tap, and Triple H pulled the ref out of the ring. After that, Brie's sister Nikki Bella, twin sister Nikki Bella, came in the ring to prevent Stephanie McMahon from leaving the ring, and Brie Bella was on the other side, so it looked like the both of them were going to just beat the hell out of Stephanie McMahon because the referee was out, so there wouldn't have been a disqualification.
Right.
Well, Nikki Bella pulls Stephanie McMahon out of the way and belts her sister, Brie Bella, in the face. And then Stephanie McMahon puts Brie Bella in the pedigree, and it's all over. Stephanie McMahon won this match. A lot of people did see this heel turn coming for Nikki Bella. I think they needed to do something different with the Bella twins. So I did kind of see that coming. It's still, even though I saw it coming, it still was pretty cool and a little bit shocking to see towards the end. So Stephanie McMahon won that match.
How original for Stephanie McMahon to use her man's move to finish her off.
Well, she didn't when she was wrestling when she was 10 years ago.
She is now.
She is now because of the whole authority angle.
Yeah.
So the second to last match of the night was Randy Orton versus Roman Reigns. This match didn't do it for me, folks. And for some pretty surprising reasons, I thought that, you know, Randy Orton and Roman Reigns would have some pretty good back and forth, but Randy Orton pretty much carried this match. I mean, besides the big moves that Roman Reigns has, like the drop kick on the apron, and then the Superman punch, and then the spear, Roman Reigns doesn't really have a well-rounded offensive game plan. He just throws some punches here and there. He doesn't really do much besides those big moves, which is what everybody's looking for, but at the same time, you need to be, if you want to be main event material, you have to have the complete package. Now, some people disagree with me on that because we've seen John Cena at the top for so many years, and
that's because of his personality. And
yeah, but you know what? Everybody says, some people will say, oh, John Cena can't wrestle. If you're a 15-time world champion, you can go a little bit in the ring. Okay, I'm sorry. John Cena isn't as bad as everybody thinks he is. I'm not a fan of him, but he is deserving of the main event because he can actually have some decent matches. Randy Orton carried Roman Reigns throughout this whole match. Roman Reigns obviously won this match. Randy Orton put him over. Randy Orton was couldn't put him away with an RKO, which Roman Reigns went into a Superman punch, and Randy Orton just RKO'd him out of nowhere, and Randy Orton only got a 2 count. So then Randy Orton goes back in the corner and goes to wherever the hell he goes in his head, tries to punt him in the head, misses. Reigns goes off the ropes, hits him with the spear, and that was all she wrote. Roman Reigns won that match. Finally.
It's a big match.
Finally, the match everybody was looking forward to.
John Cena and diverticulitis.
Well, Brock Lesnar is finally, after 3 or 4 years, completely cleared of diverticulitis, which is a very serious condition. Actually, he was in intensive care.
Oh, I remember he was fighting in the UFC whenever this whole thing came down, and I feel bad for him personally. The guy's just a douchebag, though, and I can't.
I think
stand
he's
him.
a douchebag on TV.
I don't know. He's a pretty good actor.
Because you know what? It sells
Hollywood.
tickets. It sells tickets. You want to see Brock Lesnar get his ass kicked.
But don't bring that crap to MMA. It's a completely different sport. You don't bring that crap to MMA.
Yeah, but you know what? If you look at the past year or so, you see more and more guys using that kind of psychology where...
Intelligent guys like Chael Sonnen. We had this conversation before the show.
You see John Jones doing it.
John Jones... He doesn't do it nearly as much. I have no idea what you're talking about.
That interview. Well, actually, it wasn't even during the interview. It was actually before the interview, during a commercial. What was it? John Jones and Cormier. Is that his name?
Daniel Cormier. Yeah. They actually fought at Media Day, but that was not John Jones.
But I'm talking about the interview between John Jones and Cormier off air that they caught on camera and posted.
Yeah,
John Jones basically said, "I'm going to kill you."
Yeah, they're fighting. What do you expect?
No, I don't mean kill you like in the ring.
I remember the interview, and Cormier was egging him on. You have to read the whole interview. Cormier was egging him on the entire time. I watched the interview on Sports Center, I think it was on. Cormier was pushing him that whole time. If you read the actual interview, word for word, top to bottom, you can see where this whole thing came from.
I'm not disagreeing with you, but my point is that even in UFC, they're starting to incorporate a little bit of, that.
I think it's more natural because they're actually fighting.
Well, true.
I think that obviously Lesnar is acting when it comes to the WWE with his personality, and when it comes to the UFC, these guys actually have a dislike for each other because they're going to beat the living shit out of each other. And I think there's a difference. And when Lesnar brought it into the UFC, you could see he was trying to use the same tricks he used, especially if you were watching.
And it worked because people tuned in to see him get his ass kicked.
Yeah, well, it
was the biggest pay-per-view buys they've had.
Well, UFC 100 was, but that wasn't because of him.
No.
There was like 3 title fights on that card, and it was the biggest names in UFC history there.
Let's get into the main event here. Champion John Cena defending against Brock Lesnar. And let me tell you something, folks. I have never in my entire life, and I've been a fan of WWE for 27 years, since I was 5. I have never, in a main event of a pay-per-view, in a main event of a Monday Night Raw, ever seen a title match as dominated by one superstar over the other like I saw last night. Brock Lesnar beat the holy hell out of John Cena. John Cena threw up a couple of Hail Marys and he put Lesnar into a submission move. He got Lesnar into his finishing move, but they really didn't have a lot of force to them because Brock Lesnar beat the hell out of John Cena. I have never seen a match like that ever in my life. Brock Lesnar suplexed John Cena 16 times. German suplex, which means he's grabbing you from around the waist from behind and dropping you over his head on your head. 16 times. I don't know how John Cena is still conscious at that point. I know...
And we all know that wrestling's scripted and fake and everything, but when you actually get suplexed it doesn't feel good.
It doesn't tickle.
Yeah. So out of 16 times, you would think one of those times he actually lands somewhere on his head that can cause some damage.
There was about 4 or 5 times during all those suplexes that John Cena landed either on the back of his neck or his head. And I don't know, I think maybe because John Cena is so well built and strong that he could take that, but a normal person would be dead.
Yeah.
And I know, like Cody said, you know, it's scripted and all that, and like I'd say about a quarter to half of the moves are, you know, choreographed and fake. But
it still doesn't feel good to get dropped on your head, neck, and back.
These guys fight with injuries. They get serious injuries on almost a weekly basis, and how John Cena walked out of there, I'll have no idea. John Cena, and you didn't even see him walk out of there because they just went off the broadcast with Lesnar with the titles. Obviously, Lesnar won.
It's a new kind of roids, man.
And Cena was just laying in the ring. And I have never seen John Cena in his entire career get just demolished like that. They basically, the WWE took their top guy and squashed him. I don't understand. Now, I'm not a fan of John Cena, but I don't understand the logic in that.
Oh, they're probably going to try to build up Lesnar. And
well, he doesn't need any build-up. He broke the Undertaker's streak at WrestleMania. There's only one guy. There's 40 guys that have won the WWE Championship in history. There's only one guy who's ever beaten Undertaker at WrestleMania. It took 22 matches, but somebody finally beat Undertaker at WrestleMania, and Lesnar just continued that, and he just absolutely manhandled John Cena. So Brock Lesnar is your new WWE World Heavyweight Champion. We'll see what happens tonight on Monday Night Raw.
All right, that's your SummerSlam review from the weekend. And what do you know? Preseason football has started. We're in week 2.
Oh, I'm excited.
I'm so excited, man. And we're gonna get into an NFC North and AFC South breakdown. It's Monday, so let's get this thing started.
Let's start with the AFC South. Sorry, folks, I wasn't expecting Chris Berman to come in.
A little gun happy there, getting right into. Let's get into the AFC.
I'm excited, man. It's football season, and you know, I got my 2 fantasy leagues coming up. I got the first pick in the
one
draft.
With me.
I got the one with I'm in your league, and then I'm in another league back in Chicago, and I have the number 1 pick in that draft. I'm psyched. Let's go.
And we're gonna drop some fantasy football, you know, knowledge on you from here and there, and we'll get into it randomly throughout the season. Who you should drop, who you should try to get, that kind of thing. We're gonna start off with the AFC South. The way I see us doing this, I'm gonna say who I think where they're gonna finish in the AFC South. I want you to tell me the same thing. Where do you think they're gonna finish? And then we'll go into our reasons for each team why we think
that's exactly how I have it.
All right, so I'm going to go ahead and start with saying in the AFC South, I think the Tennessee Titans are going to finish last in the AFC South. I've got the Jacksonville Jaguars finishing 3rd. I've got the Houston Texans at 2, and the Indianapolis Colts finishing 1st in the division.
I have the exact same
thing.
Not rankings, but exact same finish
for the season on the division.
For the division.
See, now I actually struggled because I kind of wanted to put the Jags ahead of Houston. I know that sounds crazy.
That could happen.
I've watched a couple of their preseason games, and when Bortles is in, if they actually make the transition to Bortles, they have something decent on offense.
Now, I'm a giant Bears fan, and I watched that game at work the other night, the Bears and the Jaguars.
Right.
And actually, the better half of football was in the first half when Chad Henne was in charge. And the Jaguars, I believe, went out to like a 16 to...
Well, you had your first team in.
Yeah.
So that
but the Bears did too.
Yeah. Well, no, I know, but I mean, it's a little bit different throwing to your first team guys.
But I was actually really impressed by the Jaguars.
Yeah, they're doing good. So let's start with the Tennessee Titans since we both have them finishing last in the division. Just for note, last year they finished the season 7-9. They lost Ryan Fitzpatrick, their QB. Their big loss, I think, is their running back, Chris Johnson.
No, they gained Ryan Fitzpatrick.
No, the Titans, I think, lost Fitzpatrick, didn't they? Pretty sure they lost Fitzpatrick. Unless they re-signed him. I thought they released him.
Well,
Anyways, I know they lost Chris Johnson.
Well, regardless
They
of whether
lost
they
Kenny
have him or
Britt.
not,
Damian Williams, yeah, he's not a top-tier quarterback.
they have
He's an
Jake
Ivy League
Locker
guy.
in there.
Yeah. They did add Charlie Whitehurst, who's a QB, Dexter McCluster, Michael Orr. So, and then they drafted Taylor Lewan, an offensive tackle, Bishop Sankey, who I think is going to be a pretty good running back in the NFL. He should be pretty good. They got Zach Mettenberger also in the draft, who was the quarterback from LSU. So they got some good stuff coming in.
Fitzpatrick did stay in the division. I got confused.
Yeah,
he went to the Houston Texans.
Right, yeah. I was going to say, I could swear that he was gone.
My keys for Tennessee this year, I have them finishing 5-11 with the high end being 6 wins and the low end being 3 wins. It's a make or break year for Jake Locker for me.
Right.
I think he's had 2 or 3 years now.
Well, the thing about Jake Locker, and this is one of the things I had an issue with, the guy gets hurt a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And not even just that, he doesn't have a lot of offensive firepower, so he doesn't really have anybody to throw to. I mean, they did add Dexter McCluster.
Kendall Wright had a big year last year, and if Kenny Britt wasn't such a douchebag, they probably would have had him putting up 1,000 yards too.
Right.
But because Kenny Britt is Kenny Britt, and he is unfulfilled potential, Jake Locker really didn't have anybody to throw to besides Kendall Wright.
Yeah, it's I don't know, man. I think that they're going to really struggle on their D-line, their QB, and their running back situation isn't good. So I have them going 4-12 on the season. I don't think they win more than 5 games, and I think they could lose or only win 3. I mean, they could go that low. So I that's why I have them at 4th.
And this will be the first year for the Tennessee Titans without Chris Johnson.
Yeah.
So, we're going to see how the running game progresses without their 1,000-yard
Like
rusher.
I said, they got Bishop Sankey in, so he could, but he's a rookie, so he could do something special. I don't know.
I just think they're too weak on D to compete.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, by far. So we both have Jacksonville finishing 3rd. I think they have a chance of finishing 2nd, depending on the Texans. But last year, the Jags were 4-12. They finally got rid of Blaine Gabbert. I think he went to San Francisco.
Yes, he's the backup over there.
They lost Maurice Jones-Drew, but they did actually pick up Toby Gerhart, I think, from the Vikings. So, and I think Toby Gerhart, every time I saw him play for the Vikings, when he did get a chance during Peterson's injuries, I mean, the guy can carry the ball. He's a good running back.
The problem is that in the last 2 years, because Adrian Peterson is such a horse, that Gerhart really didn't have that many touches the last 2 years in terms of running the ball. I have the Jacksonville Jaguars finishing 5-11 as well as the Tennessee Titans. However, I have the Jacksonville Jaguars ceiling higher than Tennessee. I have their high end at 7 wins and their low end at 4. Will the defensive additions help them? It looks like it so far in the preseason. I mean, they shut down the Bears' first team, which is not easy to do considering the Bears were in the top 5 offenses last year. Can Toby Gerhart fill Maurice Jones-Drew's shoes? That's going to be a big question as well. I'm not sure yet because we really haven't seen it. We really haven't seen him showcased. Can Toby Gerhart be the primary back? I think he'll get like 15 to 20 carries a game. And then you have the question of Chad Henne or Blake Bortles. I think you're going to see Chad Henne start the season. Now, like I said, they're proud. I project them to finish 5-11, 6-10. I think once you get maybe 6 or 7 games through, maybe even less, 5 games, you could see Blake Bortles come in. But I think they have too many question marks to make an impact this year. I think they're going to be a competitive team, but I don't think they're going to go very far this year.
Here's the way I see the Jacksonville Jaguars. I think they're going to be 6-10, 7-9, somewhere around there. But with that said, I think they have a bright future with all these guys they've actually started drafting. They picked up, Blake Bortles, who I think is their quarterback of the future. Why else spend that draft pick on him? They got Marquise Lee out of USC, great wide receiver,
I like that.
and he's been really good in the preseason, even against first teamers. Toby Gerhart, watching him at Stanford and then at Minnesota, I don't care if the guy got like 0 touches last year. I don't care. The guy can run the ball. Even watching him in preseason against first teamers, he starts out slow and then the dude's running 8-9 yards every single play.
Well, the positive if you're the Jacksonville Jaguars with Toby Gerhart is he's a low mileage back.
Yeah.
I mean,
and the dude can take a beating. I mean, all he did at Stanford was run.
He's not a small guy.
No. So if the Jags can make, the move and start Bortles, I think that gives them a better chance than Henne. If, Gerhart, Lee, and Bortles come in all together, I think the offense should be a lot better than it was in the past.
And you have Mercedes Lewis, too, at tight end.
Yeah. So,
and I really like the pickup, even though he's getting up there in age. I really like the pickup at defensive end of Seattle's Chris Clemens.
Right. Well, they did lose Babin
yes.
in the offseason. So the thing about Jacksonville that they've got to really focus on is building up their young defensive players, because they got a few good defensive players.
Paul Posluszny,
Terrence Smith from FSU.
Mm-hmm.
The dude's good. I don't know. I think that they'll be fine. Their defense, I think, is going to be their only issue because it's got a lot of young players.
Jacksonville's one of those tweener teams that you're really going to look for in about 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, and I think for them to be able to get into that number 2, number 1 spot, maybe get a wild card into the playoff or something, I think that's going to be 2 years, maybe 3 down the road after a couple more good drafts.
The unfortunate thing for Jacksonville and probably the rest of this division is that I think Andrew Luck's going to own this division for the next 10 years.
I don't know, man. It all depends on the team, because you've seen in the past with other sports, like last year with the Heat and the Spurs, the team won, not the superstar.
Right.
Andrew Luck is great. I think he's a great quarterback. He's like probably the next Peyton Manning.
I mean, if you could get anybody to step in for a legend like Peyton Manning,
yeah,
Andrew Luck was a perfect
and he
fit.
did it with no one around him. So, all right, so we both have Houston coming in at number 2. They had the number 1 pick in the draft. They've got a new coach, Bill O'Brien. I think he was at Penn State.
Yes.
He came in. Really surprising to me that they didn't pick up a quarterback as high in the draft as I thought they would, because they lost Matt Schaub, their quarterback.
Which really wasn't that big of a loss, really.
Well, you're not replacing him.
He was so inconsistent.
They lost Schaub and T.J. Yates. They're 2 quarterbacks.
I kind of like
Yates. They replaced them by getting Ryan Fitzpatrick. Then they also lost Ben Tate, their running back. They lost Owen Daniels, their tight end, Antonio Smith, their defensive tackle. They lost all these guys, and they picked up their pickups for veterans at least was Fitzpatrick, Andre Brown, Akeem Dent, and Chris Clemens. I
like Andre Brown backing up Arian Foster. I really do. That's a nice little tandem that they have there. Andre Brown did show some flashes with the New York Giants. I really like that tandem. And also, to be honest with you, I like Ryan Fitzpatrick too. I think he fits that offense because I think I read something where the coach said that his style of offense is a more cerebral kind of offense.
Well, the dude went to an Ivy League school.
Who better to get than Ryan Fitzpatrick, who went to Harvard?
Yeah.
The offense does have to find some stability. I mean, really, though, you can't find anybody more stable than Andre Johnson. The guy is 34, and he's still putting up 1,300 yards and 100 catches.
Right. Yeah, it's all depending on how Bill O'Brien's going to run this team, because we don't really know how he's going to do it in the pros compared to when he was at Penn State, because it has to be different. I'm surprised they didn't even draft a QB for the future. They went out and got Jadeveon Clowney. Now they're going to have one of the sickest defensive lines in the NFL, I think.
Once J.J. Watt.
Yeah, and once Clowney gets a year under his belt.
And you have Brian Cushing at linebacker.
Yeah, I mean, they're probably going to have a top 5 defense, every year for the next 5 to 10 years.
And, I mean, they have good corners. You got Kareem Jackson and Jonathan Joseph. My question mark is what kind of impact and how big of an impact will Jadeveon Clowney have?
I think that he's going to have a big impact for the main reason you've got Watt on the other side, and
so
he's
going to
open up.
team.
He's going to open up the line. So like you just said, Watt's not going to get double teamed. Clowney's not going to get double teamed because he's opening up that defensive front.
And then you have to worry about Cushing, who does like to rush the quarterback.
Yeah, so that's why I've got their defense is what's going to keep them in that
Afloat.
number 2 spot at least. I see them, going 8-8, maybe getting a 9-win season. I don't see them doing much better, but they can, depending on that offense. I know everyone says defense wins championships, but it's becoming an offensive league. They could only win 6 games.
I have them finishing 7-9, with the high end being 9 and the low end being 6. I just think that, and you know what? To be honest with you, that's a pretty good jump from last year when they only won 2 games.
Last year was like an aberration.
But what I'm saying is that's still a good jump.
Yeah, I mean, I think
That's
they
a good
could have.
progression.
I think they could have done a little bit better in the offseason. It's a quarterback league, and getting Fitzpatrick might work out in their favor, but I still think they should have drafted at least a second-round quarterback for the future, something. I mean, they picked up Clowney and then a guard, Xavier Suafilo, and then they picked up tight end C.J. Fierrebla, whatever the guy's name is. They did pick up Tom Savage, who
I like.
he's a
Tom
good quarterback.
Savage.
I think he's from Pitt.
Yeah.
But I don't know. That's not a quarterback for the future. And I know Fitzpatrick isn't a quarterback for the future. He's floated around the NFL the last few years. So,
yeah.
But that's what I think. I think the lack of talent at QB and wide receiver is why they're not going to even compare with the Colts.
The Colts, I have, as you do, finishing first. I project them to go 10-6, with their high end being 11 wins and their low end being 8 wins. I think 8 wins could even win this division. It's a really weak division. I mean, it will be good in about 2 to 3 years, I think, this division. Because you have Houston coming up, you have Jacksonville coming up.
Well, with these teams doing so bad for the last few years, they're getting all these high draft picks, and they're building up a young base.
It's kind of like
and then they're going to go out and pick up some good veterans to add with those young players and lead the team. I think in the next few years you're going to have Houston, if they can figure out their offense, and Jacksonville figure out their defense.
This could be a tough division.
It could be a tough division. I don't see Tennessee getting into that mix anytime in the near future.
They have so much lack of direction.
Yeah, they're kind of an average or below average team across the board. Indianapolis last year, they were 11-5. They won the AFC South, led by Andrew Luck. That guy is crazy. He's the one that basically got them that record. But they did in the offseason. They lost some good guys. I mean, they lost Donald Brown, their running back. They lost Darius Hayward-Bay. They lost, a couple guards. Their center. They lost some good guys on that offense, which is what led this team. They did pick up Hakeem Nicks, which is going to be a good target for Andrew Luck. So I like that.
I mean, Hakeem Nicks, he's going to be the third receiver.
Yeah.
I mean, Reggie Wayne just keeps doing it.
Yeah.
The ageless wonder. And then you have T.Y. Hilton. Their question is at running back. They have Trent Richardson, who they traded for last year from Cleveland.
And I think that guy's a bust.
You know what? I don't think he's he has so much. I think he can do it. I think he is just mental. I think it's just mental mistakes.
I think that guy.
I know
is
during
a
the
bust.
offseason, he's been talking to and working with the former Colts running back Edgerrin James.
Right.
And Edgerrin James has been trying to get his mental game on track. Will Trent Richardson prove to be worth the Colts trading for him? I think that's still a question that's up in the air. I know you say he's a bust, but I think it's still up in the air. I think if to complement Andrew Luck, Trent Richardson's going to have to get above 4.2 yards a carry.
See, I look at this team differently than you do. I think when you have a weapon like Andrew Luck, you use your running back just to keep defenses off balance. I don't think it matters that much if he gets above 4 yards per carry. I don't, because of his wide receivers and his talent. I think the problem they're going to have is going to be their defense. They added Arthur Jones, which is a good defensive end, defensive tackle guy, also the brother of John Jones, the UFC fighter we were talking about earlier. They got an inside linebacker in DeQuell Jackson and a safety, Mike Adams. But they still have, some issues that they're going to have to work out on defense. So
I mean,
I think I think they're going to go 11-5, and I think they're going to outscore most of their opponents. But I don't think they're going to keep scores low, and I think they're going to lose in the first round to the Pats or the Broncos.
well, when I was typing out my preview and I was looking at key players that I was looking to, I only typed out 2 players on defense, and that's Robert Mathis, who had, I believe, 19 and a half sacks last year,
Right.
and LaRon Landry at free safety, and he's even a question mark sometimes. Can the Colts take advantage of a weak division? I mean, they do have their schedule this year is really weak. Their opponents have a combined 430 winning percentage, well below 500.
Right.
So I think they're going to take advantage of that. They're going to win this division. I could see them winning 1 playoff game, but I definitely don't see them winning 2.
They're going to go up against the Patriots or the Broncos in that first playoff.
Well, the Broncos
game.
are going to have a bye.
Well, I'm assuming they're going to go against the Patriots and the Broncos. I don't know the Broncos are going to have a bye. I don't think they're going to be as dominant as last year, and we'll get into that when we talk about that division. But I just personally, I think they're going to lose in the first round. That's just the way it's going to be.
I mean, I could see them losing in the first round, but I definitely don't see them making it past the second round.
They just don't have the defense. I mean, I don't know. So let's get into the NFC North, which I think this year is actually going to be pretty stacked. Outside of the Vikings.
Yeah.
Minnesota, obviously, with me saying that, Minnesota's going to finish 4th in the NFC North. They have no clue what they're doing in the front office, coaching, nothing. They just don't know what's going on. Then I have Chicago finishing 3rd. I have Green Bay finishing 2nd. And yes, the big surprise, Detroit winning the division.
Are you okay?
I am completely okay. This is a gut feeling, and I will explain it as we talk about it. So let's talk about the Vikings.
Well, let me.
You have to tell me your top 4.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
I have Minnesota obviously finishing last. I have Detroit finishing 3rd. I have Chicago finishing 2nd, and I have Green Bay finishing 1st.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead with the Vikings. They were 5-10-1 last year. Yes, they had a tie last year. I think it was in their game in London is when they had their tie. I don't
you're
remember.
right there.
They were last in the NFC North. Okay, they lost Jared Allen, who was basically their defensive stud. They lost one of their better tight ends, John Carlson. They lost cornerback Chris Cook.
They lost Kevin Williams.
They lost Toby Gerhart, their backup running back. They lost Josh Freeman, which doesn't really matter because he's just whatever. He's a bad quarterback all around. And Marvin Mitchell, who they go out and pick up. They went out. Who did they go out and pick up? It was like they got Anthony Barr in the draft. They picked up Teddy Bridgewater, who knows if he's going to start for them or not.
Bridgewater could show something.
He could, but I mean,
and you know what? I have the Vikings finishing 4-12, with their high end being 6 and their low end being 3. I think their one big plus this year is that Norv Turner is taking over the offense.
Yes.
Now, I think because of that, Kyle Rudolph is going to have a huge year. Everywhere that Norv Turner has gone, the tight end, whoever he was, Antonio Gates, I think last year, who was he with last year? I think he was with Cleveland last year, wasn't he? Jordan Cameron.
But see, the thing too, not even just that. With these 3 quarterbacks they have, none of these guys have huge arms. I mean, whoever it is, we all
Teddy
basically...
Bridgewater is going to be your quarterback eventually.
Eventually, yes. But will he fall into the same thing as Ponder did? I think he's a
little more toolsy than Ponder.
I do too. I agree with you, 100%. I think the problem was with Leslie Frazier. He was a defensive-minded coach. There was nothing going on with that offense. They just couldn't get anything going on. Their defense was really good, though.
They need to tool up that offensive line. The only guy that stands out for me on that offensive line is Matt Khalil.
Yeah. They've got, their biggest question, obviously, is their quarterback. Is it going to be Castle, Bridgewater, or Ponder? I think we can all throw Ponder out. Ponder, being a Florida State fan, it depresses me that it didn't work out for him, but I think he's going to get traded and be a backup quarterback somewhere, and maybe he can go somewhere where they have someone who can help him out. I don't know.
I think you'll see Castle start the season.
I agree with that.
I think about 6 games in, you'll see Teddy Bridgewater.
It just depends on how much he progresses, because if he doesn't progress, they're not going to throw him in there and risk it.
I think it also depends on how good of a season Adrian Peterson has this year. I feel really bad for Adrian Peterson because he is stuck on a nowhere team year after year. Even if they have a good year and they somehow eke out 9 to 11 wins.
2 years ago they made the playoffs.
Right,
but Josh Freeman's the reason why they didn't go anywhere. Christian Ponder got hurt the last game of the season against the Packers. Yeah. Josh Freeman came in, and he literally, my wife and I were making fun of this guy throwing the football because he would get nervous, and at one point he threw the football straight into the air. Literally straight into the air. He was trying to throw it out of bounds, and he threw it straight in the air. It was just embarrassing. So they got a new coaching staff. That's their biggest plus, I think.
Also, I think you have to take into effect, now, it's different. I don't think it'll affect them as much because they play in the NFC North, but how will playing their home games outdoors for the first time in years, I think they're playing at TCF Bank Stadium, which is like the Minnesota Gophers stadium.
Yeah, it's a college stadium, which they're already having issues with because I guess the Gophers, they don't want the Washington Redskins being billed as the Redskins because of that whole issue.
Tough shit, you're a college team.
Now they're trying to tell the Vikings and the NFL that they don't really want the Redskins being billed as the Redskins. They just want it to say Washington.
Another progressive college.
Yeah, so the Vikings, I think they're going to go 5-11, 6-10. I don't think they're going to fall off much worse than that.
I can't see them winning 6 games. I mean, I did say their high end is 6, but I don't even see them winning.
I think it's 5-11. They've got some good players, and depending on how Bridgewater works out, I'm going to say 5-11, 6-10. I don't think they lose more than, or they win less than 4 games.
I mean, the key players, obviously Adrian Peterson. The guy is just, he might be the greatest running back I've ever seen.
Yeah, the dude's nuts.
I mean, year after year. I mean, he's already at what, 10,000, a little over 10,000 yards.
I think by the end of this guy's career, he's going to break almost every record possible.
Do you think he could reach Emmitt Smith and like 18,000 yards?
I think he could. I mean, especially on this team where they rely on him so much.
Do you think
it doesn't matter that it's a quarterback league when you don't have a quarterback, and that's what Minnesota deals with.
What I'm saying is, with all the wear and tear that he's taken over the years, do you think he
has much? It's just been the last couple years he's been getting hurt.
Do you think he has enough? Yeah, but that's all it takes. It'll snowball with an NFL player.
But look at the guy. He came back from that injury and
he
had
a
2,000-yard season.
But you know, I love Adrian Peterson. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, guy's great.
I mean, the guy was on one of my favorite shows for a couple episodes, The League, and you know, even off the field, he's awesome.
Yeah.
So I do nothing but cheer for Adrian Peterson. I hope he has a monster year, probably because I'm probably going to take him with the first pick in one of my fantasy leagues. I don't care who they have ranked ahead of Adrian Peterson. I'm sorry, Adrian Peterson is the best running back in the NFL. So I have Minnesota finishing dead last, as you do.
Okay, so here's where we start to disagree because I have your team, the Chicago Bears, finishing 3rd. Now, last year they were 8-8. They had Jay Cutler was injured during the season. They didn't even make the playoffs. They did finish 2nd in the NFC North. They lost Julius Pepper, Devin Hester, their backup Josh McCown, and Henry Melton. They did get Jared Allen from the Vikings. It's like the NFC North trades off players. I don't know what that deal is. They got Lamar Houston, Willie Young, and they also got their first-round pick was Kyle Fuller, which is a defensive back, which they need.
And they did pick up Jared Allen.
Yeah, but they, like I just said, they lost Julius Peppers. It's not that
and
huge of a gap.
And in the same amount of time, Jared Allen has had 17 more sacks than Julius Peppers.
It's not that.
And he's younger.
Big of a difference between the two players. Look at the eye test. I'm guaranteeing you
the
there's
biggest,
not that big of a difference.
Out of all those losses that the Bears had, the biggest one for me, being a Bears fan, so I focus more on the
Devin
Bears.
Hester?
No, Henry Melton,
Yeah.
the defensive tackle. Henry Melton. Now, the reason the Bears let him go is because he was so injury prone. But when he did play, he was a force. And I love the revamped defense. Last year was the first time in my entire life that the Chicago Bears offense was better than their defense.
That's one of the reasons why I have them at third. Because last year, they finished 30th in points allowed and yards allowed and 28th in sacks allowed. They averaged 5.3 yards per carry against them, which is the worst in the league.
They revamped that defense. They picked up defensive ends, Jared Allen, Lamar Houston, who's a 26-year-old stud.
They also got
Oakland.
Young.
They got Willie Young. They picked up Israel Adonijah. They had their first-round pick. They picked up cornerback Kyle Fuller, and they picked up safeties M.D. Jennings and Ryan Mundy.
Their secondary is going to be horrible.
Their safeties, maybe.
Their secondary. Those rookie cornerbacks, they're not going to be ready for guys like Aaron Rodgers.
Well, first of all, the rookie cornerback isn't going to be starting.
Dude, tell me what you think their secondary is going to look like and how they're going to improve that much.
Well, see, the problem with the Bears secondary last year was the safeties. And because you have Charles Tillman and Tim Jennings, who lead the world in turnovers, in forced turnovers. So the safeties were the big problem because you had guys like Chris Conte starting at the safety position last year. They did pick up two safeties in M.D. Jennings and Ryan Mundy, who are, I would say, average safeties. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't say they're anything spectacular. So they will have a slight upgrade at safety. That is still going to be the big question mark for the Bears, is the safety position, which is going to affect those deep balls that the other team is throwing. However, like I said, Tim Jennings and Charles Tillman, they just make guys turn the ball over. And not only that, you have at the defensive tackle spot, you have Jeremiah Ratliff, formerly Jay, from the Dallas Cowboys, and they re-signed DJ Williams at the middle linebacker spot. So I think their defense is going to be vastly improved this year. I have the Bears finishing projected 11-5. With the high end being 13 wins and the low end being 9 wins.
You are out of your mind.
I am not out of my mind.
They're gonna go 9-7. They're gonna finish third in the NFC North. I don't think they're gonna be a bad team. I think their offense is awesome. With Cutler, if Cutler isn't inconsistent, by the way, and doesn't get injured, I think they're gonna be awesome.
Well,
dude, okay, Brandon Marshall, Alshon Jeffrey, Martellus Bennett, and Matt Forte. Great offense. I completely see that.
And they just picked up yesterday Santonio Holmes.
He's above average.
What I'm saying is that's a great third receiver.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's kind of like the Hakeem Nicks pickup.
Yeah.
I think their offense is going to be great. Here's the things I look at. Cutler's not going to stay healthy. He doesn't. He's not going to be consistent. He's never consistent. You can even see in the preseason games, he hasn't been consistent in the preseason games. So even if their defense is fractionally better, I still think they're going to have issues at the quarterback because, well, one, they got rid of their savior in Josh McCown, and who's their backup now?
Their backup is either going to be Jordan Palmer, who's Carson Palmer's younger brother, and who has actually looked really good in the preseason.
Against two teams.
And their other guy that's competing for the backup spot, Jimmy Clausen, who is a former starter at Carolina. He didn't work out there.
And looks really weird. If you look at his face, it's just
it is weird. But
he's
also looked really good in the preseason as well. The thing about Cutler is I don't take much stock in the preseason. Okay, it's just a showcase for the bench guys.
You can only pay attention to the ones versus the ones because after that happens, and even then, these guys are actually dogging it because they don't want to get injured in a preseason game.
To be honest with you, I look more at the games after the first team comes off the field because I want to see
the guys who are trying to make the team and all that.
Who's going to be?
I get it.
Who's going to be the backups? Now, let me just throw out a couple of stats for you for the Chicago Bears. Between Martellus Bennett, Matt Forte, Alshon Jeffrey, and Brandon Marshall last year, they had a combined 328 receptions, 4,069 yards, and 27 touchdowns between four guys. Okay?
And they still finished 8-8.
Well, that was the defense last year.
The defense isn't going to be that drastically better.
The Bears averaged about 25, 30 points a game.
You're not going to have a team go from 30th in points allowed and yards allowed and 28th in sacks allowed and 5.3 yards per carry. You're not going to have them just magically become one of the best defensive teams in the NFL.
For me as a Bears fan, what would be a major success this year, the offense is going to be just as good this year.
As long as Cutler stays healthy.
Now, we're paying Cutler a mint now. We're paying him
Yeah.
over $100 million, so he better
Which
fucking
was
stay healthy.
stupid.
He better stop banging his hot wife and stay in the fucking game. Now
Commit
he
to
is
celibacy.
a tough quarterback, but he does get hurt. So that's the question mark. The big thing for me is if the defense can go from 30th and get to about the 15 range in terms of defense, that would improve them from an 8-win season to an 11-win season.
Yeah, of course it would. Obviously, I mean,
but I'm saying it would,
because they wouldn't have close games they're losing anymore.
It would jump them from 8 to 11 wins.
I don't think that they're going to be that improved. I think they'll be improved. I do think they're going to be improved, especially on the line, adding Jared Allen. I do agree he's better than Peppers, but I don't think he's that marginally better. Reason why I have them third is I think Green Bay and Detroit are going to be amazing this year. I really do. Let's get in.
One final thing. We really didn't. We touched on him briefly, but one guy that we have to bring up for the Bears is Matt Forte. Matt Forte last year had 1,933 all-purpose yards and 12 touchdowns. If he can replicate that this year on top of that passing game with an improved offensive line, I think the sky's the limit for the Bears. I don't have them winning the Super Bowl or anything. I'm not that much of a homer, but I could see them getting to the second round.
I can see them finishing second in the North. I don't see them winning it.
Well, I have them finishing second.
I could see it, but that's only if Detroit falls completely off. My number 2 is going to be Green Bay. I have them at number 2. That they were 8-7-1 last year. They were the team that tied in England against Minnesota. They won the NFC North with 8 wins. I mean, that's how bad it was last year. There was just crazy stuff happening. But they did lose in the wild card game against San Francisco. Their team pretty much stayed, the same. They did lose James Jones, their wide receiver, and their center, Smith. They picked up Julius Peppers from Chicago, which is a good addition. And they also used their first-round pick on Clinton Dix out of Alabama.
I love that pick.
It's a great pick for them.
I think he dropped.
It's a great pick for them because he is a good safety. So, and especially when you're facing guys like Matt Stafford and Jay Cutler with the weapons those two teams have, you need a good safety.
So, what do you have them finishing their record?
I think they're going to go 11-5. Their defense should look a little bit better with the addition of Peppers, at least enough to keep them, in the playoff hunt. And Eddie Lacy, after last year,
I had him on my fantasy team last year.
I had him on one of my fantasy teams. The dude was just nuts last year. And then it's Aaron Rodgers in the backfield, man.
You can't go wrong with Aaron Rodgers.
He's got to stay healthy. He had some issues last year. I just think that they're going to be an 11-5 team. They're going to be better than last year, but they're not going to be as good as Detroit.
I have the Packers finishing first in the NFC North. I have the projected to go 11-5, with the high end being 12 and the low end being 9. 7 starters left in the offseason. Matt Flynn came back to be Rodgers' backup. They did, like you said, add Julius Peppers and Clinton Dix, which I think is a major boost for their defense, which has been lacking the last couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
They do have the 3-4 defense, and a huge signing for me. I think a signing that people did talk about a little bit, but I think is an underrated re-signing, is Jordy Nelson for a 4-year, $39 million extension. Jordy Nelson, if he can stay healthy, that guy, prototypical wide receiver. He reminds me, I don't know if you remember, he reminds me of a guy that Denver used to have, Ed McCaffrey.
Right.
Ed McCaffrey was incredible.
Yeah, I think this team is going to be... I think it's weird because the NFC North is getting so offensive-minded, which I didn't look at them that before.
This is a changing league.
They've been a defensive division for so long.
Well, they call it the black and blue division because they pound
beat
each
up.
other.
Yeah, and it's so crazy because when you think, the Bears have Marshall, Jeffrey, Forte. They've got Cutler, who I think is not a great quarterback. I think he's a second tier, so he's right under those great quarterbacks. And then you got in Green Bay, you have Aaron Rodgers, who's one of the best quarterbacks in the league right now. You got Jordy Nelson. You got James Jones.
Well,
you don't have James Jones anymore. I'm sorry, he left. You've
Randall Cobb.
Randall Cobb, yeah.
That's a good tandem.
Yeah, these are great guys. So And then you have Eddie Lacy in the backfield who showed up last year.
Now, however, even though he had reception drop problems in the past few years, they did lose Jermichael Finley.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that they're going to be good enough to go 11-5, finish second in the North. I have
So you have Detroit finishing better than 11-5?
No. I've got Detroit finishing 11-5.
Just better than just beating Green Bay. Okay.
Yeah. I have Detroit. They were 7-9 last year. They finished third in the North. They had their issues. The thing that Detroit has always struggled with is discipline. They have been one of the highest flagged teams in the NFL.
Just look at their D-line.
Yeah, this is just what's happened. They made some big changes. Chris Houston's gone. Nate Burleson, Willie Young, Sean Hill, their safety, John Wendling's gone. He was like their special teams captain. They got rid of Jim Caldwell. They picked up Jim Caldwell. I'm sorry.
Yeah. He's a
disciplinarian.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that they're going to get rid of those discipline issues. I liked their new guys they brought in. They got Golden Tate from Seattle.
Yeah.
One of the guys that I'm really going to look forward to this year is Eric Ebron. This dude is a big and physical tight end. He played for North Carolina. He was the number 1 tight end taken. This guy is going to be a beast. And when you add him with Megatron, Stafford's
and Golden Tate.
Yeah, and Golden Tate. Stafford's going to have guys all over the field to throw to.
And not only that,
and Reggie Bush and the backfield.
And Joique Bell.
Yeah. So I think that with the discipline issues being gone, and this is going to be the highest powered offense in the NFC North.
Wow, that's a major statement.
Dude, I'm telling you, Matt Stafford is a really good quarterback.
Oh,
really good quarterback. They have the best wide receiver in the game. Okay? You got Reggie Bush, who's a vet, out of the backfield, and he had a good year last year, too.
His tandem with Joique Bell was great last year.
Yep. So you got Calvin Johnson, you're adding Golden Tate, you're adding Eric Ebron at the tight end position. Dude, their offense is going to be really, really,
well,
really
you know
good.
who their new offensive coordinator is? It's Vince Lombardi's grandson, Joe.
The only problem they're going to have is fixing their secondary. That's the only problem they're going to have.
Well, look at their defense is anchored by their D line with Nick Fairley and Ndamukong Suh and Ziggy Ansah.
Yeah.
That's a sick athletic D line.
So they're going to be great at the line. Their biggest issue, literally, is going to be can their secondary show up.
Now I have them finishing 8-8.
Oh man, you're crazy.
With their high end being 9 wins and their low end being 6. I think because of the transition to the new coaching staff, it might take a year for them to get used to the new system. Usually that first year under a new system, you kind of have to get used to everything, because not only do they have a new head coach, they have a new offensive coordinator. I mean, it's a revamped coaching staff, and I think sometimes, like you saw with the Miami Heat when LeBron went down there, yes, they got to the finals. They made it to the
finals the first year,
but
I'm not saying they're going to win the Super Bowl.
Even LeBron said they had to get used to playing together.
Yeah, I'm not saying they're going to win the Super Bowl, but I could almost guarantee they're not going to win less than 9 games.
I have them, like I said, their high end being 9 games. Like I said, I think next year could be that year that they'll win 11. With the coaching changes and all that, it might take a year to transition them into a top first place caliber team. You still have your anchor on the offensive line at center, Dominic Raiola. You have
their lines are going to be
their
good.
Cornerback Chris Houston.
Yeah, the thing about them is they have talent all over the field.
I just think their secondary is their biggest question.
Yeah, I agree completely with that. But the thing is with their line, quarterbacks are not going to have the time. They have the best line in the NFC North.
The D line.
Yeah, they have the best D line in the NFC North.
I think they're going to be rivaled this year.
You think, but up to this point, they've had the best D line.
No, as of right now,
yeah,
the Detroit Lions have the best D line.
They're going to be pressuring quarterbacks, and I think that, I mean, like I said, it's good that Green Bay and Chicago have high-powered offenses now. I don't think this is going to be one of those years where you have 21-point games. I think they're going to be in the 30s in the NFC North. I think these are going to be some high-scoring games.
Knockdown, drag-out, scoring affairs.
So
I think the only team that's going to be able, in terms of their defensive line, to rival the Detroit Lions would be the Chicago Bears. You have Jared Allen and Lamar Houston on the ends, and you're going to have Jay Ratliff in the middle. Plus, they moved Shea McClellan, who didn't really have that much of an impact on the D-line, back to the outside linebacker or middle linebacker. Either way, he's a linebacker now. And you still have Lance Briggs on the Bears. So, that's a big difference in our standings. So
I'm taking a gut feeling on that, man, because Detroit, they seem to stumble. Each year they have a little bit of a stumble. Sometimes it has to do with their QB being injured or disciplinary issues, that kind of thing. I just think this year, with the new coaching staff and with adding the addition of Eric Ebron at tight end, you're adding another huge threat. This guy is fast, big, and he has ball skills. So I just, we're going to get into some other divisions on our next episode. That took care of the NFC North and the AFC South. And I was the one that came up with our top 5 list today. And knowing we were starting our preview for the season, I thought, let's say who is the top 5 divisions in the NFL. I just kind of figured this would be a good way to see where these teams should place and everything like that. So I'll let you go ahead and start with your top 5, starting from 5 and working to 1.
Well, for number 5, I actually kind of had a tie between the AFC North and the NFC South. The AFC North, just for the fact that I love the rivalries in the AFC North. You have Baltimore, Pittsburgh, Cleveland, and Cincinnati. Any two of those teams play each other, it's a rivalry. It's the knockdown, drag-out division, which I think has taken over the NFC North in terms of black and blue.
Right.
Baltimore and Cleveland, that's all you got to say. Baltimore and Pittsburgh, Cleveland and Pittsburgh, Cincinnati and Cleveland. Any two teams you put together in that division, and it's a rivalry game. It's a big game for those fans. So I have them tied with the NFC South for my number 5 division. NFC South, you have New Orleans, Atlanta, Carolina, and Tampa Bay. And, New Orleans and Carolina are right now the class of that division. And they both, I think they both had over 10 wins last year. I think Carolina had 12 and New Orleans had 11. So simply for that fact alone, I had them tied for 5th. My 4th is the NFC East. Now, I'm not big on the NFC East. I don't really like any of the teams in the NFC East. But simply for the rivalries in that division, I put them at number 4. Cowboys and Redskins. Giants and Philly. Like with the AFC North, and you put any of those two teams together, it's a big rivalry.
You like watching the games.
Yeah, absolutely, because you know that it's going to be 110% the whole game. Number 3, I have the NFC North. We just talked about the NFC North, and just the rivalries, it's pretty much Chicago and Green Bay is the main rivalry in that division, just because it's the oldest rivalry in football. And then you have Chicago and Minnesota, Chicago and Detroit, Green Bay and Minnesota. Any way you slice it, those are good games. And now, like we just said, that division is transitioning a little bit, and it's becoming more of an offensive division, which is making for more exciting games. So I have them at number 3. Number 2, I have the AFC West. You have Denver, Kansas City, Oakland, and San Diego. San Diego was a major surprise last year. They finished well. They did they just miss out on the? No, they made the playoffs.
They made the playoffs.
Yeah, they made the playoffs.
They lost in the first round.
Yeah, and then you have Denver and KC, and Oakland is coming up. They're making some good additions, and they drafted well. And I think in about 2 or 3 years you'll see Oakland move up in that division. But I think this year you have Denver, KC, and San Diego. Those 3 teams are going to be really fighting with each other to see who can win that division, although I pretty much think everybody agrees it's probably going to be Denver. And number 1, I have the NFC West. The NFC West, you have Arizona, Seattle, San Francisco, and St. Louis. The only exception in that division is St. Louis, but a lot of people are really kind of looking up on them. You have head coach Jeff Fisher. I think it's kind of make or break now for Sam Bradford, but that team is vastly improved from last year. Then you have San Francisco and Seattle. Those two teams are going to be in the playoffs pretty much every year. And then you have Arizona, who had a nice season last year. And I think that's a very competitive division.
Arizona or St. Louis? You said St. Louis?
Arizona.
Okay.
Arizona had a nice year last year. And did I say St. Louis?
I thought you did, but
well,
maybe
they
you
used to be the St. Louis Cardinals.
Yeah, in the baseball team, but...
Well, no, they used to be the St. Louis Cardinals in the NFL.
Yeah.
But anyway, Arizona is up there too. So you have three really good teams who could win at least 9 games each. And I think St. Louis, like I said, is up and coming. So I have them at number 1.
All right, for my top 5 list, I won't give you a bunch of info because Nick and I were pretty similar on this top 5. My number 5 is the NFC South. You've got the Falcons, the Saints, the Bucks, and the Panthers. I think Cam Newton leading the Panthers. They're what everyone's saying their issue is going to be is wide receiver. I don't think they're going to have that big of an issue because of Kelvin Benjamin coming in and who they've already got in place. The Buccaneers, I think, are the low end of the totem pole, but they're getting better. Saints, obviously, Drew Brees, Jimmy Graham, they're a high-powered offense. And the Falcons, I think, are going to be a surprising team this year because I think last year was kind of like a flash in the pan. I don't think they're going to be the team they were last year. My number 4 division is the NFC North. Like Nick said, we already talked about it. They're transitioning into an offensive league, but still keeping some defensive talent to keep, that bruiser mentality. With the Bears, Packers, Lions, and Vikings, really right now the only question is the Vikings. The other 3 teams in that division are threats for the playoffs. So, I like the NFC North at 4. For 3, I have the NFC East. Mainly, I think the Giants are going to be a lot better. Eli Manning heading that. I think the Eagles are going to be a lot better with Chip Kelly's whole system being in effect for the second year. The Redskins all rely on Robert Griffin III, whether he stays healthy, if he is like he was the first year. And then the Cowboys, you never know with the Cowboys because they have the talent and the money to become one of the best teams in the NFL, but for some reason Jerry Jones just keeps shooting himself in the foot.
They always just suck it in December.
So, and Tony Romo, he can work some stuff out, and they can be a really good team also. I also agree with you. For my number 2 is the AFC West. I think it's enough said. Broncos, Chargers, Chiefs, Raiders. Broncos is a top 2 team in the NFL. Chargers are on the upswing. Raiders are on the upswing. Chiefs are doing really well. They had a great season last year with Andy Reid coming over there, leaving Philly. So I think that's a good division. And then the number 1 division, I don't think anybody can argue this at this point in time. When you have the Seahawks and the 49ers, who are 2 of the top 4 or 5 teams in the NFL in the same division, they're making the playoffs each year. And then you got the Rams, who are on the upswing, and the Cardinals, who had a decent year last year. So that's the way I broke it down. NFC South, NFC North, NFC East, AFC West, NFC West. Obviously, from my list, you can tell I don't think much of the AFC.
Well, I actually put a second AFC team in at number 5, tied with the NFC.
The
division,
AFC or the AFC North,
because just to kind of give it a little balance.
Well, the AFC North is actually good. I mean, if Andy Dalton could get his first win in the postseason,
and Baltimore,
and then you got
decent.
Baltimore's good, and Pittsburgh, Ben Roethlisberger's kind of getting up there, and he's getting a little bit beat up, and then Cleveland, who knows? They play tonight, and whether they're going to do the Johnny Manziel or the Hoyer thing, so they're a good division. But I just think these other divisions, they're a little bit better.
So I think we can agree that the NFC South will be 5th, since we both kind of had them there. I can't put the NFC East any higher than 4, because besides the Giants winning a couple Super Bowls in the last 10 years, none of those teams do anything in the playoffs. I'm looking at the teams, what I think they're going to do this year. Like this top 5, I'm saying current best divisions. I understand that.
And I think
the Cowboys, even if they do make the playoffs, they don't do anything. And the Redskins, who knows with all their injury issues, and who knows with the turmoil that the team nickname is going through, what kind of media distraction that's going to create.
I'm cool with putting them at 4 and moving the NFC North into 3.
Okay, yeah, that sounds.
I mean,
fine with
that's
me.
fine with me. Yeah. So our final would be the NFC South at 5, the NFC East at 4, the NFC North at 3, the AFC West at 2, and the NFC West at number 1.
Yeah, that sounds. I mean, we didn't differ too much on that. There's really not much debate. I mean, especially at number 1.
Yeah, I think as long as Seattle and San Francisco keep what they have going on.
I mean, both conferences, West divisions are baller, man. I mean,
Yeah.
You have 2 or 3 teams in each of those divisions that could make the playoffs. Definitely 2.
Yeah.
But possibly 3.
I just think that I think it's obvious the NFC is the
Class
heavily
of the NFL.
yeah. It's just I don't think you can make an argument for the AFC right now.
It's kind of like the Western Conference in NBA.
I mean, in the AFC, you could have a Super Bowl champ. I mean, you still have Denver, and you have some good teams in the AFC, but I just think that there's so many more teams in the NFC that have that opportunity to make the Super Bowl or win it. I mean, just in our NFC North talk, I had 2 teams winning 11 games in the regular season, and then the third-place team winning 9.
Yeah.
So...
well, folks, you know what? For part 2 of our NFL preview, we'll have 2 more divisions coming up for you next episode. We're not going to let you know just yet because we don't know just yet. So
we plan these things last minute.
Yeah, you know, we're on top of the ball. So, anyways, folks, have a great evening. Like us on Facebook, the Nole and Deep Dish Show, and follow us on Twitter at the ND. Is it the or just NDD?
I don't know. Search us out. You'll
NDD.
find us.
It's at NDD Sports Show.
All right, guys. Have a good night.
AK on my Mustang, right next to that bubble. I swear with these 50 shots, I shoot out with 5-0. Pockets getting too fat, no way, why there's no lipo. Money talks, bullshit walks on a motherfucking tightrope. And I make that pussy tap out, knock that pussy out cold. You get beat the crap out, but that's just how the dice roll. These hoes want that hose pipe, so I give all these hoes pipe. She get on that dick and stay on all night like Bush Lights. Let's do it, fuck talking, we out here, we ballin'. I'm spraying that, these verses singers like WD-40. We fucked up, we trucked up, no ifs, ands, or but fucks. Bitch singers go behind back like nunchucks, and that's fucked up. And my hoes down, my cups up, my singers down for whatever. These bitches think they too fly, well tell them hoes I plug first. I'm Tucci, young Tucci, my truck fit, fuck Gucci. She's throwing kisses at me with her pussy lips, smooches, and that's 2 chains.